So I'm now going to introduce Sadie Restrick. Now I better get this right in terms of her bio. Sadie Restrick is a global speaker, consultant, trainer, author, published academic scholar, specialized in the field of workplace well-being for over 10 years. 2 companies and a range of qualifications, including a MSc with distinction in workplace health and well-being. And in 2020, Sadie also presented her published research on work-related stress at the European Occupational Health Psychology Conference and spoke at the Leadership in Wellbeing Summit. So, Sadie, welcome.
Thanks, Simon.
Did I get all that in?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and seeing as we know each other quite well, I should hope that you would get my bio right.
Yes, and you'd think I'd know it off by heart without looking at a screen by now, wouldn't you? But I don't get it wrong.
Yes, indeed. I'm just gonna, I think I'm sharing my screen, but I'm just gonna stop sharing at the moment because for some reason I can't see all of your lovely faces. So bear with me 2 seconds. I'm just gonna try that again. But yes, congratulations on that wonderful introduction. So
yes. And
what
for
was
those
everyone?
Who put 2 and 2 together, we both got the same background. So we're both at Wellity. Sadie is the Chief Operating Officer also at Wellity Global.
Right, let's try that again. Okay, that's better. I can see you all. Okay, so fabulous. Thanks very much, Simon. And well, thank you all for joining us for the session today. So as we've established, I'm going to be talking about the main subject matter, creating a culture that cares, and looking specifically at the things that organisations, employers, leadership, HR can do to really convey that sense of culture. And just to start us off with the poll results there and looking at the increase in revenue that can be achieved when we do actually invest the time and thought into really improving workplace culture and knowing exactly what that represents. And really what we need to focus on, and what I'll be focusing on the next 10 minutes with you, is ensuring that comes from a place of authenticity. And this is where a lot of the time, the best efforts, the best intentions can really, really fall short if employees don't really buy into what's being done and why it's actually being put in place. Did anyone see, or has anyone heard about the Amazon pods? Just put yes in the chat. You can expand on your thoughts on those pods if you like. I'm quite intrigued to hear about it. Simon was actually interviewed on Talk Radio over the weekend talking about these pods, these Amazon pods, which, as many of you have seen, didn't really land as they thought it would, and actually was welcomed with quite a lot of disdain on social media, because really what we know about the working conditions at Amazon and the working culture and the challenges that are faced by people, having these little soundproof pods really isn't speaking to the challenges that actually people face psychologically, the risks to their well-being, and hence it really just didn't sit right with not only their workforce but the wider population as well. So quickly they took that off social media again, and it just goes to show that sometimes companies can invest all these different things and say, look, we really care about this, we really care about our people, and we want to do this to try and make a difference. But unless it's really something that's fit for purpose, then it can really, really fall short. And more, particularly over the last year, we've seen people really emphasizing how culture is so important to them in their working lives. And a big part of this, and when we're exploring this topic with leaders, is talking about what culture actually is, what it represents, what it looks like. And something I heard probably a year or 2 ago, somebody said that the culture is essentially how we act, what we do when nobody's looking. And if you think about the last year when we've been working at home and nobody's looking at what we're doing, but the culture and our cultural values and behaviors is what's embedded with us in the way that we work and the way that we think about our work. And as we saw with that poll, that has a profound impact on the relationship that an employee has with the organization. So yes, it boosts revenue by 4 times as much when we're investing in cultural well-being. What about the number of people that cited company culture as a reason for wanting to leave their jobs? So those that are actively job seeking, what percentage of those do you think cited company culture as their key reason? So just use the chat just to put on there what you think a percentage may be of job seekers looking to leave and attributing their company culture as the main reason. So you've got 75%, 65%, 67, 60, 70, 58. So quite a broad range here, 40, 83.4. That's really specific. So we've got quite a wide variation, really between 50 and 70, I'd say, as an average. So some good thoughts and reflections on there. It was just shy of 50% of people that actually cited, the culture, their working environment as being a reason for actually wanting to leave their business. And if you think about the cost of replacing a person, not to mention business reputation, this is such a key driver as to why we really need to be thinking about this really in a way that is impactful and effective. So to start off with is thinking this question that I just mentioned, what is culture? What are we actually talking about? Now, A lot of employers, a lot of leaders, when I ask this question, they sort of, talk about mission statements and their values. Yes, there's talk about behaviors, but really what we need to do is make quite a distinction between two different things, which is cognitive culture and emotional culture. So I know that in business, there's a lot of different iceberg models, but this is a particular favorite of mine. So our cognitive cultures of an organization are very much the spoken values. This is what we talk about, essentially saying in our company, this is really important. Work-life balance is really important to us. Flexible working, people promoting, looking after their well-being. So this kind of sets the tone for how to think about the organization and sets the tone for how employees should start to think. So this is the stuff that's really, really visible. So if you go on a company's website, this is our mission statement. This is what we represent, particularly on things like social media. So it's that outward expression. However, a lot of the time we see that there's not a consistency between the cognitive culture and the emotional culture. Very, very, very different experience. This is what people actually feel. It's their moods, it's their attitude. It's very much contagious. It's all these shared emotional states. So it's essentially the employee's experience of working for that organization. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen, perhaps experienced personally, how it can feel if those two don't align. Now, every company has an emotional culture. It might be a good one, it might be a bad one, it might be somewhere in between, but it's when it doesn't match up with that cognitive culture. So what we do isn't the same as what we say what we do. That's when it becomes a really, really big problem. And even the best spoken values of an organization for what they truly stand for, if the actual employee experience is different to that, that could really, really cause a problem, particularly as we saw with these Amazon pods, saying your well-being is important, have some time to watch some horse eating some nuts. And it's like, yes, but do you know what my working life is like? Do you know what it's like to work here? So it's that mismatch between the two that is when we start to see a problem emerging. So what do we need to do? Because it's one thing establishing the problem, but what do we need to do from here? So starting to think forward is really paying attention. And some of you may have heard me talk about intentional communication, particularly in the virtual working space. So it's communicating with intent, knowing what I want to achieve when I communicate with my staff, what the best correspondence to use is, what message I want to convey, and what I want to know from that person. So is it about performance, productivity, or just generally how they are as a person? So one thing to help you to do that is understanding something called selective attention theory. So this is really seeing beneath the surface of the iceberg. So actually going beneath the depths and sometimes quite deep with that. And I've got a quick video to show you. Some of you in the UK might be familiar with this video, but interested to see what you think if you haven't. So the instructions are in the video. This is really, really, really short video, but just go through and it'll all become clear at the end of the clip. So the instructions are there for you.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13.
Anyone get 13? Say in the chat how close you were. Yeah, 13. Well, good. You can count. That's good. But
Did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
there he is. So some of you, as I say, might be familiar with that campaign. It was a cycling campaign about missing things that you're not actually looking for. And this is a lot of the time the problem that we see in relation to leadership and culture is the fact that we're not actually looking for those signs, those indicators about what people are actually truly experiencing in relation to living and working within these different workplaces. And it's about being really, really intentional and taking the time when we communicate to actually think about what people are feeling and actually understanding what they feel about that workplace culture and where changes need to happen. So essentially that selective attention theory is that we're often just paying attention to the surface level, where there's only so much we can take on because of sensory overload. So we're constantly thinking about the things that we need to do, the jobs that we need to get done. So we don't necessarily take the time to just slow down and think about what people are actually telling us a lot of the time quite clearly that's right in front of us about what they need and want from us. So it's just slowing down and being more intentional. So some takeaway tips in sort of thinking about, particularly as a leader, thinking about creating this culture that cares, is being ACE. So we want to be ACE in leadership. So this is an acronym. People who know me know that I love an acronym. So firstly, the A. So the A is actually threefold. So the A is thinking about whether you are available, accessible, and approachable. They're very, very, very different things. And often we sort of blur the boundaries between them. So making sure that you are somebody that is approachable, that people feel that they can actually come to you and talk to you about things that are going on, and that they know that that will be met with a sense of understanding and no judgment. Thinking about whether you're accessible, whether people can actually get to you, whether they feel that they can practically have conversations when they need to, and also thinking about availability as well. You making time in your schedule to discuss people's well-being and make sure that you're really emphasizing the message that you care, that you're there for them, that you value them, that you acknowledge them, and how important that is. The C is thinking about compassion. So compassion is something that we've heard a lot about over the last year, well, over a year now, isn't it? So just starting to think about what that looks like and what that represents. Bit of a misunderstanding sometimes with thinking about the difference between empathy and compassion. Typically, compassion is much more solution focused. It's much more proactive. So empathy is thinking, I understand this must be really tough for you, but compassion is, what will we do about it? So essentially, this from a leadership perspective and thinking about cultural behaviours, it's regularly having these conversations and not just identifying that something might be really difficult for someone, but thinking, okay, how can we move forwards from this point? So we're showing empathy that somebody feels stuck here, but it's mapping out a path forwards with them, not imposing solutions upon them, but thinking, what can we do to help you move forwards from this point? And that takes us on to the E, which is empowerment. So making people feel that they have got the ability to manage their own well-being. They've got the tools and resources to enable them to do that, to essentially help them cultivate a growth mindset, to understand that it's okay to make mistakes, and you know that all of us are just learning. And it's a really, really important message to convey that if they are struggling, that it's important to speak up and to speak out. And that's a true strength of true sign of strength and courage. So making sure that people feel empowered to ask those questions, to speak up, to speak out, and that you're there to support them essentially during those tough times. So ACE leadership is your little takeaway acronym. So that brings me to the end. I'm fairly conscious of keeping on time, but I've tried to cram in as much for you to think about as I can in 10 minutes. So I hope it's given you plenty to think about. And passing back now to our esteemed host, Simon, you still with us?
Yes, I am. Yes, trying to keep up with everything that went on then, just so that everybody knows. It is recorded, and I think these slides are going to be made available, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So I know you've got a lot in there. A lot of the time you talk for an hour roughly, don't you? 45 minutes for an hour on a subject. There's plenty more, but we had the condensed version. Thank you very much, Sadie. We're very, very lucky to have you. And for anyone who wants the recording or the slides afterwards, please just put it in the comments or let us know. So there's plenty of stuff there. And what we want to do now is take you to a breakout room